Do you know Java 8 default method had one major problem? We have a report generator over here. Under this, we will see we are generating one simple report and one detailed report. Now we have done the implementation of this using the default method. Now you see when I'm calling this particular default method, you see there is a duplicate code which is written in both of this particular method. In order to solve this particular problem, Java 9 had introduced a private method in an interface to solve this particular problem. Problem before the Java 9. Now in Java 8, the default method was introduced to allow the evolution of the interfaces. Now without breaking the existing implementation, the default method was introduced. Now default method had one concrete implementation within the interface itself. Now if you can look at over here the interface, we have a default method introduced over here, and then we have the implementation with respect to this. Okay, so this was the behavior of Java 8 default method. Now here there is a problem which has arisen with the interfaces. Now let's say you wanted to provide a complex default method over here. So there was a n number of logic written over here, very complex logic written over here. Now this method contains some duplicate code. Now if you take a look at this, this is going to take having a duplicate code over here, and which is required by the multiple locations. Now this is written in one location. Now you see there is another method which we have written, the another default method which we have the same logic written. Now in this two location there is a duplicate code over here. Now the developer had left with only two choices. The one was he had to write this particular duplicate code which created inside the duplicate method, so which was leading to have this particular duplication code. It was very harder to maintain. Now another option was move the helper code to the specific static method over here. Now we have to write this particular static method inside this and write the code over here. Now this was the second option which were we left out. Now this would work, but it would expose the internal implementation details to the of an interface to all the other classes. Now this is going to violate the principle of encapsulation. Now what is the solution to this? The solution to this is the private interface methods. That is, we have introduced in Java 9. So the solution is private interface method. Now Java 9 has solved this particular problem by allowing the interface to have the private methods and private static methods. Now these methods can only be containing the helper code that is accessible only to the other method within that same interface over here. So that is one thing as a solution to it. Now how this is going to do that? This is going to make use of the reusability, that is the code reusability. So the all the helper code whatever is there can be shared between the multiple default or a static methods within the same interface. Now I will just show you this particular interface method over here can be used up in the different methods over here. So that is one thing which a code reusability feature. Now the other one is encapsulation. The internal implementation, whatever it is written inside this, are hidden to the outside world. So this will be only inside this particular method and it will not be available to the outer world. So keeping the interface API clear and much more focus, as it is going to be the public contract, right? So it is going to be the contract which has to be maintained across the standard. So this will stop from exposing it to the external world. Now if you take a look at this, what I will do, I will just write this particular code over here. Now instead of writing this particular whole logic over here, I can simply call this particular method and comment this out. Now I'm just showing you in a simple example, but if you see here, this is the code reusability, and also this is going to the helper method where we have written inside the private method over here. So this is going to solve your both code reusability and the encapsulation. With respect to this particular private methods, there are some rules with this particular methods. Now if you have a private method, then this can only be called from the non-static method. Now if you take a look at this, I'm calling from this particular default method over here. So this has to be the default method which is has to call from the same interface itself, not from the different interface. So that is one rule. The second rule is, if your this particular private method is static, then this can be called from both default method and from the non-static method within the same interface only. So this is the rule number 2. Now when you're dealing with private method, you cannot make this as an abstract over here. So if you try to make this particular method abstract, you cannot do that. This is illegal over here with respect to the new feature of Java 9 private interface methods. Okay. So this is one thing which you have to make a note. All these particular 3 points you have to ensure that this is not violating this with respect to the Java 9 principle. I hope I was able to explain you what is this particular private method with respect to Java 9, whether this particular interfaces can have private method or not. The interview questions asked in all the interviews with respect to Java, Spring Boot and microservices. So I was able to explain you in depth with an example, live example of Java code. Also, we have looked at to what are the rules with respect to the private methods, what is possible and what is not possible. So if this video was helpful, please give a video thumbs up, and also don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Also please do check out my channel for other relevant videos with respect to Java, Spring Boot, microservices, interviews related videos which are in depth, and also the real world interview questions which are asked in the real interview.